of 31 Wild Halloween Review Nights. Today is the 5th day of this project, and also the final day we will be discussing Universal classic monster films. We've talked about Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man. I didn't intend to list them all because I did that the last few videos, but I did it anyway. There is one more film and one more monster that deserves to be spoken about. Let us now dive in to the world of The Mummy. Released in 1932, The Mummy focuses on the resurrection of an ancient Egyptian mummy named Imhotep, played by Boris Karloff, who rises from his tomb with a scroll and heads off to Charo. Years later, he disguises himself as a man named Erdith Bey and calls upon two archaeologists to help him dig up the tomb of his long-lost princess so he can resurrect her. However, an encounter with a young woman named Helen makes him believe she has been reincarnated, as she shares a resemblance in features to the princess. This has the mummy conduct a plan to kill Helen, mummify her, and then resurrect her to make her his immortal bride. Well, I guess the fun did stop when the Invisible Man became visible again. That's not to say I didn't like The Mummy. It's not that I didn't enjoy it, or I didn't like it. I definitely don't hate it. I think it was a pretty good film. I just kind of got a little bored with it. I mean, compared with the other films that I saw from Universal, they were a bit more fun, and they definitely grasped my attention. The Mummy, unfortunately, didn't. I mean, it did in the beginning, and at a few times it did, but the whole time I was watching it, I didn't feel the same thing that I watched when I saw The Wolfman or The Invisible Man. I mean, for me, personally, it was just kind of bland a little. That doesn't mean that there are bad things about it. I think the story was pretty cool. But it's just one of those films that you watch and you're just like, yeah, that's okay. The one thing that I really did like about this film, however, was the performance of Boris Karloff. He's freaking amazing. He is really cool. I like watching him perform, and he fits extremely well in these Universal monster films. There's a few shots with him really close up. They use the shots a few times, and they lighten up his eyes, which I thought was really cool. There's especially one scene where he's like in the dark and the eyes lighten up, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Definitely hearing Boris speak in this film with that voice, also something else that's really great about him in these films. He's got that creepy Halloween-like voice, and when listening to him, it did kind of remind me of the singing voice, or singing voice, it's really just a talking voice, in the song Monster Mash, which I know I have referenced before. I referenced these films to be a monster mash, which I don't think I should do that anymore. I actually looked Monster Mash up to see like who really sings it, because I never paid attention to who sung it, and I'm getting two different responses. One of them is Boris Karloff, which is telling me that he did have some involvement with the song when it came to kind of singing. Would you consider that singing? It's more like reading and singing, like putting rhythm in your words. Well, that is singing. So I got Boris Karloff, but then I got somebody, Bobby Boris Pickett. So I don't know who exactly sings in the song. If you know, you can let me know. I'm going to keep probably looking. I think it's Boris Karloff. If it is, that's pretty cool. Yeah, unfortunately, those are really the only highlights of what I could say about the film. The rest of it was okay. Yeah, like I probably said before, it's not one of my favorites. If I had to rank these 5 films, this would probably be the last one. That in no way means I hated it. If I ended up watching it again, I personally wouldn't mind. I don't know, I felt more entertainment watching The Invisible Man over this, honestly. And the same thing goes for all the other films. I would say, you know, going back to the ranking, I would probably put The Invisible Man in the beginning. At first place, we have The Invisible Man. Second, we have Frankenstein. Third, we have The Wolfman. Fourth is Dracula, and 5th is The Mummy. I kind of feel bad putting Dracula in 4th, but I like Frankenstein and the Wolfman over Dracula, but I certainly like Dracula over The Mummy. So that's all I really got to say about The Mummy. The only notes I really have on The Mummy are just Boris Karloff. Well, that was an interesting talk about The Mummy. I didn't really talk about it much. Yeah, so final thoughts on The Mummy. It's okay. You know, it wasn't horrible. I was, personally me, I was just a little bored with it. Maybe you'll think differently. No interesting special effects in this one. There is a cool effect at the end where the mummy dies, spoiler, and you kind of see his face forming back into the dead, corpse-like figure he is, and you even kind of see his skull a little bit, which is cool. Yeah, that's really everything I gotta say about it. And with that brings us to the end of this Universal Classic Monster Mash of films. I just said I wasn't gonna use that reference, and now I did. I've lied to myself. I already did a ranking. I didn't intend to do a ranking, but those are all the Universal films that we're going to be talking about, the monster films at least. Again, there's a whole series of these guys. I did have Bride of Frankenstein on this list, but I didn't want to get overwhelmed with all the different monster films because I knew if I did any more than 5, I would end up doing like half of this whole series of monster films. Overall, with these films, being that these were the first times that I've ever really seen these films, I really liked them. I thought they were entertaining. They were definitely a thing of their times because I honestly wasn't scared of any of them. If anything, I was amazed at all the stuff that went on in them, even in The Mummy. I know I was a little, not cold, but a little bland with the Mummy review here, but, you know, I was amazed on things that happened in that film as well. You know, that film is no different than the other films, honestly, in regards to the legends of these monsters and like the way the story develops. They were fun to watch, and I enjoyed them, and I'm really glad I did it. I can now go around and tell people that I have seen 5 of the original Universal monster films, and nobody in my friend group will probably care. Before I wrap this up, there is one thing that I do want to quickly discuss, and I didn't realize this until when I was watching The Invisible Man. I wanted to wait until I saw The Mummy to kind of see if the same thing would happen. Unfortunately, it didn't, and I really wish I saw The Mummy before I made the Invisible Man video, because then I could have just wrapped this specific part up in The Invisible Man. But I guess now is also okay to do it because I'm wrapping things up with the with these monster films. I'm saying wrapping a lot, and I'm not making any puns with the Mummy film at all. One of the things that all these films, aside from The Mummy, have in common are their female protagonists. If you've seen the 4 films, do you get what I'm talking about? I didn't realize it until I was watching The Invisible Man that all the main female roles in these films, like the love interest characters in the films, they're all kind of similar. Like, they have similar traits, they kind of look similar in regards to what they wear, how their hair is. I looked up all these actresses in color, and all of them are blonde. Especially their characteristic trait of being a fiancé to somebody in their film. Or if you want to even drag The Mummy into this, the coincidence that it all kind of relates to getting married at some point. In Dracula, we have a young lady who becomes under Dracula's spell. She is a fiancé to a guy, I believe his name is John in the film. In Frankenstein, Henry Frankenstein has a fiancé named Elizabeth, and we see her on her wedding day. She passes out on her bed when the monster comes in and scares her. In The Wolfman, we see a young lady named Gwen who has a fiancé, but she ends up becoming Larry's crush in the film. And in The Invisible Man, you have Fiona, who is Jack's fiancé, who isn't in the film as much, but she plays a big role in the film. And in The Mummy, you have this young woman named Helen who kind of resembles this princess the Mummy is going after, or at least wants to resurrect. And while it's never really established that Helen is a fiancé to somebody else, and if she was, maybe I missed that bit, but the whole purpose in this film is the Mummy is trying to kill Helen because he suspects that she is the lost princess. So he wants to kill her, then resurrect her, just so he can marry her. So there's a big theme of wanting to get married in these monster films. I don't know if anybody else caught on to that if you've seen these films, but I found that pretty interesting. So with that brings us to the end of this monster discussion regarding classic monster films. Which one did you enjoy listening to the most? Have you seen any of these films? If not, which one do you think you would enjoy the best? I'd love to hear all your thoughts if those comments are turned on. So make sure you let me know in the comments below. That's it for the discussion of the Universal monster films, but that is not the end of the discussion of these monsters in general. In the whole retrospect of this project, because it is Halloween and we see tons of vampires and monsters and werewolves around this time of year in all different kinds of media, including the film that we will be discussing tomorrow. So come back tomorrow as we take a look at how these monsters were brought into the 21st century by using CGI animation and making Dracula sound like Adam Sandler. Thanks for watching The Wild Review. I'm The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing.